I owe you guys a painting and finishing video, right? Now, I'm not going to try to put out the one I did a few weeks ago from the large Santa scene that we'd worked on for several weeks. It was probably 2 hours worth of painting that I was going to have to try to do voiceover for. I didn't have the time to get it done. I really don't feel like dealing with it anymore, but I think I have a workaround. So this past weekend, I had the incredible opportunity to take a class with Mr. Blake Lunsford. Blake is easily one of my biggest influences. He was one of my earliest influences when it comes to caricature carving. And, you know, I've been wanting to take a class with him for a long while now. Finally was able to make it happen this past weekend. And over the course of that weekend, I was able to turn out one of these little guys right here. It's one of Blake's designs that I did in a little bit different style, a little flat plane action going on there. And this guy needs painting. So I'm going to show you the complete process from beginning to end in a much more time efficient manner than that large scene would have taken. So stay tuned and I'll show you how this is done. All right, first and foremost, let's go over what tools you're going to need. First one I'm going to need is my reading glasses so I can see what I'm trying to do. We're going to need our carving that we're going to paint. Now, in the previous video, I did a plaid pattern on that guy. I did that based off of the video that Pat Coffey did for the International Association of Wood Carvers a few weeks ago using gel pens. Well, I contacted Pat and asked him what pens he used, and Pat was kind enough to send me a picture and show me exactly which ones he used, and I couldn't find those on Amazon, so I thought, well, these will work. Let me go ahead and tell you, if you want to use a gel pen to do any type of line work on a carving, don't bother with these particular pens. They smeared like crazy, and I thought I had ruined the piece in the process. Fortunately, I was able to salvage it, but it was incredibly frustrating, and I thought I was going to puke there for a few minutes when I saw that bleeding all over the place. But I was able to make it work, but I'll never use those particular pens on a carving again. Now, I have found this particular pen, and I don't know what kind it is. It looks like Tool or something like that. It's another gel pen that does work. The only problem is this is the only color I have, so I'm kind of limited in what I can do with it. All right, beyond that, what else are we going to need? Well, I'm going to use this Minwax Natural 209 stain here. I've got myself, this is an old egg tray that I used to mix my paints in. I got a couple of jars of water. Whoop. Got one just to clean my brushes in, and one that I use to add water to thin the paints. A selection of paint brushes and the paints that I'm going to use. And these are just craft acrylic paints. And I'll go through each color as I go through the process and tell you which colors I'm using at the time. First things first, we're going to take this guy and if I can get this to open, we're going to dip him straight into that stain. And I'm going to use this paint stick here. I don't think I said anything about that, but if you do not have one of these, make yourself one. This is just a 1-inch wood dowel that I cut the head off of a screw and epoxied in there. And this just allows me to paint without having to touch the piece and potentially transferring paint into areas where it does not belong. So just a quick dip in that stain. We're going to wipe away the excess. Now, I didn't get all the way down. Let's dip that again. Make sure we get it even coverage on everything. That's a little better. Now we'll wipe off that excess. Now you can allow this to dry overnight or whatever if you want to, but I actually find that I enjoy painting on it while it's still in this damp state. If you do this and you wipe, use a rag to wipe away the excess. This is an oil-based product. It's not nearly as combustible as like boiled linseed oil is, but you do need to be careful with it. So dispose of your paper towels and rags properly. Don't just wad them up and throw them in the trash. All right, so I've got a little medicine dropper here that I use to transfer. This is just clean water, and I'm gonna put, I don't know, this looks to probably be about 3 milliliters or so worth into one of those wells. And I'm gonna take, this is Black Plum made by Americana. And my stash of this is starting to get a little low. I need to buy myself a new bottle. In order to keep this from just dumping out all over the place, I'm gonna just transfer a little bit of that straight into that water. Now I add the water, or I add some water first, because if you just dump the paint into your palette or into one of these wells and then try to add water to it, it doesn't mix as well. At least I don't find it does. So I like to add some water first. That's a tip that I picked up from watching Richard Holden paint. His process is a little bit different than mine, but this is something of his that I really find helpful. And I'm gonna take that Black Plum and pretty much use it to shade just anywhere where I've got a low area here. You can see that because this is wet, it causes that paint to wick just a little bit. I don't have a problem with that. So when I go back over it here in the next little bit with the next coats, I think it all blends in pretty well. I like to do the shading on the front end of my painting, and I can add more later if necessary, but this will keep the tones similar. I'm going to use probably a red here. So I'm going to use a red paint for his robe here. And having this value underneath that red is going to darken it while still having a red look, if that makes sense. I don't know how to talk artistically. I don't know all the correct terminology there, but try it this way. I think you'll see the results. You'll understand what I mean. And we're just gonna darken any little folds, any little wrinkles that we got. Now with this guy being flat plane, there's not a ton of those, but I did make the effort to carve them in. Like I want to showcase that, to highlight it. So I'm just gonna pop it in here and there, all over. Right here around where the hair and the beard meets his body. I'm going to deepen that just a little bit. Maybe here on the back side of this sign, we'll do the same. just creating shadows. I've said it, I don't know how many times on this channel, shadows are what makes a carving really stand out. And the more you do to enhance those shadows, the better your carving is going to look. The easiest way to ruin a good carving is with a sloppy paint job. And I'm not the most skilled painter in the world, not by a long stretch, but I have improved in that area, and I think it's paid dividends as far as how my carvings look. So take the time to really make that paint look right. Do all you can there. Right there in between on his mittens, between his thumb and his fingers, I want to deepen that up just a touch. And I'm gonna come right here underneath his mustache. Lightly darken that area. One thing about painting into this wet surface is as that stain gets drawn down into the fibers, it'll pull that paint into the fibers as well and almost make it like a stain. It'll give you a little bit different effect. It makes it, to me, makes it look better. It doesn't look like the paint is just a layer of plastic sitting on top of the wood. Like, this paint becomes part of the wood itself. And I think it just looks better overall. You can do the same thing with just water. If you've watched Lynn Dowdy paint his carvings, he uses just straight water and paints into that. I have trouble controlling the paint using that method, so I like to use this stain. It just works better for me. All right, so we've got that. I don't know how well it shows up on the camera, but we have those areas deepened up there. I'm going to continue shading a little bit with this this burnt sienna. And I'm just going to use just a tiny little bit of this, because on this carving, I'm only going to use it on one little area. So I'm just going to mix or get some water on my brush and pull some of that out. Nice little thin bit, and I'm gonna go right here underneath. Let me dab the excess water out right here underneath these cheeks. So shading this area right here will make those cheeks pop out even more. You know, if we want a Santa carving, we want big, plump cheeks on them. This is one way to make that really stand out. And I see I got a little bit of wood fiber clinging on right there. I just need to clean out. Keep a knife handy when you're painting is also helpful. You know, oftentimes you find those little hangnails that want to cling into tight spots that you need to clean out, or sometimes you get paint in an area where you don't necessarily want it. You can clean that off with a knife oftentimes. I'm going to use this raw sienna right here underneath his nose as well. We just want to make that area just a touch deeper. Get right back here in this little crevice beside his nose, like so. All right, clean that brush off. Now, while these paints dry up just a little bit, I'm going to move on and start painting. I'm going to paint the white areas here. Now, white, I don't thin nearly as much as I do my other colors. To me, when you try to paint a super thin white, it just looks kind of muddy and nasty. I am going to thin it down a bit, and I'll test in a couple of spots, see what I think. If I don't like it, I can always add a little bit more paint to my mixture. Let's go right around. That's not too bad. This is going to take me a minute, so I'm just none of it's going to really be any different. It's all going to look just like this, so I'm going to fast forward through this part. All right, so one thing to be mindful of if you use this method is this end grain here may absorb the paint a little bit differently than the rest of it does. And if so, you may end up having to go back and do another coat on there. That's generally all I ever have to do. If it gets absorbed really fast and the color gets way too muted, I can usually go back and add one more coat on there, and it's not a problem. There we go. So that's all the white I'm going to do for the time being. There are going to be some other areas that's going to be painted white, but for right now, I'm going to leave those be. And we're going to move on to getting his skin covered. So the first step, the first color I use when painting skin tones is this yellow ochre. Again, my stash of this is starting to get kind of low, so right here we go. Since I'm not doing a lot of skin here, it's just his face, I don't need much of that mixture. I just want a nice thin wash of yellow ochre over the entirety of his face. And while I'm doing this, I will also go ahead and paint the beard with this yellow ochre as well. The reason for that is this is something I picked up from watching a Dave Stetson video. Putting that yellow underneath the beard gives it a much warmer tone, and that'll make it stand out from the white. When I do the white on the beard here in a little bit with the yellow underneath, it'll look different than the white of the hat band. It's an easy way to get some variation there and make those body parts and pieces stand out without having to change colors. So we'll just paint all this in the yellow ochre all the way around. Since I don't really have any kind of hair details painted in here, this is the only step I'll use on this one, you know, being the flat plane nature that it is. If I had, you know, details, the waviness of the beard and whatnot, I would actually layer up some different colors underneath there to make those stand out more. We'll give that a minute. Let that yellow ochre dry, and we'll move on to painting his robe. See there, got my finger in there and accidentally touched part of it, but I can just grab my knife, clean that right off. Keep a knife handy while you're painting. So let's move on to paint the robe and his hat. And I'm going to use, let me get some more water, one of these wells here. We'll go about that much. How much is that? I don't know. Again, about three milliliters or so. And I'm going to use this Folk Art Cardinal Red. I like this color. Well, I like this color better than just a regular primary red for carvings like this. It's just got a little bit of a richer tone. Thin that down a little bit more. Now, red against white, you got to be careful with your color bleeding here. So in these areas where you got, you know, butts up against these whites, just kind of sneak up on those areas. Don't try to glob a bunch of paint on there and let it run all over, or it'll mix in with your white and you'll have a mess. And one more thing to note here, when you're painting these figures, use the bristles of your brush to kind of massage that pigment into the wood fibers. Again, it's just one of those little things. This is actually a pointer that I picked up from Tony Folletti. Just helps to drive that paint into the wood fibers and gives it a better look. That way it doesn't look like the paint's just sitting on top of the wood. Now, can you see how that what is it, black plum? Yeah, black plum shading underneath there makes those areas pop out. Take the time to add some shading to your paint. It'll really make a difference. Kind of a tricky way to hold this thing and keep it in the frame. If I wasn't filming, this wouldn't be an issue, but here we are. One other thing that this paint stick allows me to do is to move the piece around and let gravity help me get the paint where it needs to go. So I can hold it upside down areas like this where I don't want it necessarily running down, and keeps the paint from going all over. You can just kind of twist it around. I can hold it to the side here if I want that paint to run up underneath that sign, and not the other direction. If I see it starting to run, all I gotta do is twist the piece around, and usually that'll slow it down in time for me to correct it. So there's his robe. Get right here a little bit more. You can see painting in these thin washes still allows that wood grain to shine through. Now, using this Minwax, the grain will not be as prominent as it is with boiled linseed oil. I have a love-hate relationship with the linseed oil, though. It works great in the moment, and I love the warm, rich tones that it gives, but it also can bleed through your carving over time. It can cause it to become a dust collector just because of those oils weeping through. It can change especially lighter colors like whites. It can make those look much, much darker, as it ages and oxidizes. And I don't know. Oh, that's very red. Must have picked up a glob that wasn't quite as mixed in, but we will work that out. We just have to do the rest of it in a similar fashion. But as I was saying, the linseed oil, I know a lot of really, really great carvers that use it regularly and consistently and love it. I have off and on for years now, and I may end up, going back to it. I can't promise you, but I am enjoying. I've used the Minwax in the past and didn't care for it. I think my problem was I was trying to. I was mixing in a raw sienna oil paint with it. And I may have been trying to add a little bit too much of that, and it felt slick to me. I didn't like the way the paint adhered to it. But now using it, just the raw 209, not adding anything to it, I've had much, much better results. So this might be, my new go-to. I do know that Blake uses the Minwax, but he does add the raw sienna to it. And, if you're familiar with his work, you know that he gets fantastic results. Pat Coffee uses the same method. And it's just there's a little bit of a learning curve with everything. I may not have given it a good enough try the first time, but so far this go around, I'm kind of liking the results. So we'll keep working with it for a while longer, at least till this can of it runs out, and we'll see where we stand then. This hat is cut into the end grain a fair bit, just the way it's angled. So I don't know how well that shows up, but it is soaking up a good bit of that red. May end up having to go back and add one more coat. We'll see. We'll let that paint dry for a few minutes and see what it looks like. That's how things are coming now. All right. So our yellow oxide is pretty well dried. We're going to move on to the other color of the skin. And since I don't need much of this, I'm just going to mix it up here. This is going to be a red oxide. Now, it's my understanding that you can't find this particular color any longer. This is a very, very old bottle. I don't use much of it, but I'm about out, so I'm gonna have to find something to replace it here soon. But really, any kind of like a rusty type of red. It's got almost like a brownish tone to it. But I really like the way it looks over this yellow as a skin tone. And we're just going to do a thin wash of it. As always, you can add more paint later, but you can't. It's a lot harder to take it away. So sneak up on these colors. I don't know how well it shows up, but I'm doing very, very thin washes here. And I'll let those dry and see kind of where it stands after that. Now right here for his lip, I want to get a little bit more of that right there. And I might actually take a little bit of that red, mix in there with it. There we go. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of that plum black and put right there in the opening of the mouth, like so. Got a couple of spots on the cuff here we need to clean up. I think I saw one spot right there. Get a little bit more that white underneath there. All right. So now I'm going to thin this white down just a touch more. Not much, but just a little bit more. I'm going to go over the hair and the beard, mustache. Looking to get even coverage on everything. And once again, I got some end grain here. It's not going to all play the same. You just got to take your time with it. I had a little bit run into his mouth there. I'm going to take a paper towel and just dab that out. Again, I'm going to let gravity be my friend here. I don't mind if that white runs up into this white, but I want to try to keep it off of the red of his suit there. So I'm going to turn this thing upside down. Let gravity pull the paint away from it. flip the opposite way. I don't want that white to be pulled up into his mouth there, so I'm gonna flip it over. And I may end up actually right here on his mustache getting just a little bit of full strength white. Just going over that just a little bit heavier. I'm trying to get full coverage on all that mustache. Use those paint bristles to kind of push the paint up into areas a little bit at a time. There we go. Gonna go over everything, make sure it's all even. And we need to give this fella some eyebrows. I'm gonna get my brush fairly dry here. I'm just gonna paint those on. Little carvings like this, trying to carve in eyebrows can be a little difficult. So find it easier just to paint them in. You don't want this being super thin though. Trying to keep it from running into areas where it don't belong. All right. While I got the white out, I'm going to use full strength. I'm going to paint in his eyes. Now you got to be careful getting into these corners. Just go slowly. Like so. Start in the center of the eye. Put your pigment down and just use the bristles on the brush to kind of move it around where you need it to go. This side's gonna be a little bit more difficult for me to get to. I like to use, I don't have a steady hand, so I like to brace my finger against somewhere on the carving that might not be painted or the paint's good and dry. It helps me control it in these little tight spots. I'm gonna go with this thinner white. Maybe add just a little bit more water to it. I'm gonna paint over. Well, so we learned us a lesson. That pen bleeds as well. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna let it bleed for a minute. We're just gonna paint over everything, let it do what it's going to do. And just so you're aware, this was actually, this was the writing that I put on there, I did yesterday. Like, it's been over 24 hours since that ink was laid down. I thought it felt pretty well cured. Obviously, it is not. So, we're going to go with, we're going to add some more white to that mixture. Whoa, that's way too much. That's what I get for trying to do this when I'm a little frustrated. All right. Of course, that writing doesn't show through as well as it did with that thinner coat, but I guess I'm just gonna have to add it on to the back end after this is good and dry. Maybe it'll show through enough that I can kind of trace over it afterwards. Getting out of frame, sorry. Me. Live and learn. All right, so I've hit this guy with a hairdryer a little bit. Just letting that paint tack up a little, start to dry out some. I don't love it, but you know, it is what it is. I have to work with it. All right. Let's move on to another color here. We'll go with a tad bit of this plantation pine green here. I'm gonna paint his mittens with that shade. trying to get in these tight spots. It's kind of hard manipulating around my camera and all the various crap I got spread out here on my table. Alright, clean my brush out, get that good and dry. I'm gonna go on small eyes like this. I'm not gonna try to do the eyes like I do on a normal ornament. I'm just going to do a dot of black here for the iris and the pupil. Very, very carefully. Same thing on the other side. I always like to start on, well, I guess it's the character's right eye, it's the left eye as I'm looking at it. That way I've got it in view while I paint the other side and can kind of get the size of them pretty well matched up. All right, so I've added a couple of layers of white to that sign. It still looks muddy and nasty to me. I don't like the look of it, so I'm gonna try something entirely different. I'm gonna grab my burnt sienna here. I'm gonna get my brush fairly dry. And I'm just gonna dry brush over all of that. Creeping out of frame, sorry. The piece is pretty dry now, so I'm not afraid to grab it. Make it easier on myself. I'm trying to twist around my camera here. So what I'm hoping to do with this is give the appearance of kind of a weathered old sign. It might take a little bit more work, but we will see how it goes. I'm gonna build up a couple of layers. Of different colors. And then I'm gonna try to work those down. If that makes sense. All right, so there's what we're looking like now. I'm gonna hit this with a hair dryer right quick, dry that up, be right back. All right, so this is the solution that I've come up with. I dry brushed the burnt sienna on top. Didn't really love that, so now I've gone back and dry brushed some white on. And I'm just using, this is just some construction paper. Just using that to, not almost like sand, but it's not really sanding it. Just want to peel back that paint just a touch, soften it up just a little bit. I'm gonna do this a couple more times. We're getting closer to something I can live with, but we're not quite there yet. So let's keep working on it. All right. I said to heck with it. The color that covers up better than anything that I found is gray. I don't have any gray on this piece. So I think adding it in here will make that sign stand apart a little bit better, and it won't look nearly as muddy as everything else I was trying to do to fix it. So that's what we're going to go with. Sometimes you just got to figure stuff out on the fly. And that's where I'm at on this one. This is a little bit heavier coat of paint than I would have wanted to do, but when it comes to coverage, sometimes it's just what you got to do. Thought adding the burnt sienna and then the white on top would give it a little bit warmer look. But it just looked like crap. So this is what we're going with. Might dab a little bit of excess off here to give it a little bit of a textured look. Paper towel. Probably doesn't show up too good on the camera, but I think that does help it. Doesn't look like a giant piece of slate that he's holding. I can live with that. Let's let that dry and we'll finish it up. And so one little thing you can do to really add some life to your characters is just place a tiny little white dot in the pupils. I'm just going to use a little toothpick. I've got some styluses I use to do that on larger pieces, but I like using a toothpick in a lot of cases, especially for these smaller carvings. I think it really adds a lifelike quality to the overall piece. So there's where we're at. Now we just need to let this paint get really good and dry and cured, and we'll finish up the process. Hold tight. All right, so sometimes experiments fail. I got kicked in the teeth by this one a few times, and I just did not like the look of it. Especially that sign right there. Didn't like the way that was going. So I stripped it all down. Took it down to the bare wood. Went back with white, and of course not this one because there's not even blue on there, but I used a little fine point Sharpie to do the lettering instead of the gel pen. I'm not done playing around with the gel pens, but I'm not using any of those again anytime soon. That's twice now that I've gotten burned, and it hasn't been fun. It's been incredibly stressful. So I've gotten the paint good and dry, and then I went and added 3 very, very light coats of this Cryoline Fusion flat clear lacquer. I really like this product here. I can pick it up at my local Lowe's. You have to go with very light coats though. If you try to go too heavy with it, it's going to either run or get cloudy or look glossy. It's not going to look right. But if you hold it back 12 inches or so and just kind of finally mist everything about 3 times, you can do this next step. What I got here, of course, if you go to your local Lowe's and pick up a bottle of Howard's Feeding Wax, it's not going to look like that. What I've done is taken, I don't know, about yay much of this is raw umber oil paint that I added in, and it does not want to mix up all that well. So I take a copper rod or something, bend it up, stick down in there, and twirl it around and shake it up, and it takes a little while. It takes a little effort to get it to mix in, but then I can. Well, it's cold, so it's not wanting to squeeze out all that well. It's been down in my basement, and I think the high today is 35 degrees. So the viscosity is up there pretty good. Let's do it this way. Starting to get down into the bottom of the bottle, so it doesn't flow as well. I'll just pull out a little bit here. This is a brush. If you're going to use a paintbrush for this, you're just going to have to sacrifice it. You're never going to use it for anything else again. But I like to brush that on fairly heavy. I'll put it everywhere. Really using the bristles on that brush to push it into all the little nooks and crannies, and I'll buff it as I'm going. just hit everything with it. This is a mineral and citrus oil based product. If you try to do this without sealing first, to me, I don't like the results. Now, I know some carvers who do that and have great success with it. Me personally, I don't like the results, even with just plain Howards, no tint to it. It'll, those oils will cut the paint and transfer them over and kind of muddy things up a lot of times. I'll let that sit for a minute or two, and then I'm just going to grab a rag. This is an old shirt that I've outgrown here. And I will just wipe away the excess. That raw umber paint will get into all those cracks and crevices, and it gives me a little bit of an antique type look. I want to make sure, like right here in the corners of the eyes, I take my time and clean that out really well. It gives it a little bit of an antique look, and since I'm not the best painter in the world, it helps cover up a lot of my mistakes. Now, it'll look shiny for about a day until those oils start to evaporate, especially that mineral oil. It'll evaporate away, and it'll leave your piece with a nice luster that won't be sticky. And to me, it just takes away the chalkiness of the thinned acrylic paints, gives them a lot more vibrance, and just makes the piece look better overall to my eye. But that's my process. That's how I'm painting everything now. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video and maybe gotten a laugh at me getting frustrated and wanting to cry a couple of times. But if you did enjoy it, I'd appreciate a like or a share, anything along those lines. Let me know what you think. Shout out in the comments if you want to see anything different from me. The question of the week comes from Joe. He's asked, where do I get my carving wood? Well, Joe, I got a couple of sources. Number one source, if I plan far enough ahead, is I order from Heineke Wood Products. To me, they offer the best carving wood around. Theirs is they're second to none. And it is very, very reasonably priced. Takes a week or so to get it to me most times, but there's a pretty quick turnaround when they ship it to me. If I'm short on time, I need some wood quickly, I have a local shop here called Klingspor's Woodworking. They carry basswood. Matter of fact, I think they might order it in bulk from Heineke. And I'll just stop by there and pick up a block if I need one quickly. They upcharge it quite a bit, so I try to avoid buying a lot from them. But push comes to shove, and I need it fast. That's what I'll go do. So Joe, that's my advice on buying carving wood. If you know you're going to need it, just order it from Heineke. They are the best. At least if you are based in the U.S. If you're outside of the U.S., I don't have a good answer for you. But maybe somebody watching does and can chime in the comments and let us know. Well, until next time, happy carving, and I'll see you in a week or so. Bye.